Too many of our fellow Canadians have fallen victims of scam.
We have disrupted the necessary flow of money from Canada to India.
CBC News is there as 2 GTA residents are arrested in connection with those overseas phone scams that have been plaguing Canadians for years. A Brampton husband and wife are facing charges tonight. They haven't appeared in court or entered a plea yet, but police allege they were part of a ring connected to those fraudulent call centers in India, centers that have bilked Canadians out of nearly $20 million. The charges coming after a CBC Marketplace investigation. David Common has the latest.
Investigators arrested and charged 2 people in connection to these transnational scams.
RCMP investigators spent nearly a year investigating a Toronto area husband and wife. And CBC was there when both were arrested, accused of being accomplices to the overseas scams Canadians know all too well.
My name is Dennis Gray, calling you from Revenue Agency CRA.
The tax scam, SIN card scam, and many others run out of Indian call centers by organized crime.
There will be legal consequences and you will be arrested to defraud the government.
CBC Marketplace has investigated them for years, even getting a hidden camera inside one call center. They are lucrative. Investigators today displaying thousands in cash recovered from the couple's home, along with a money-counting machine and more than $100,000 in jewelry. The couple are accused of being money mules, collecting money from victims in Canada and sending them to crime bosses in India.
We have disrupted the necessary flow of money from Canada to India, which will have a big impact on the operation and the bottom line of the scammers.
Good for them. Good for them. It's about bloody time.
Former fraud investigator Mark Simchison believes the arrests send a clear message.
This is going to be a deterrent for sure. We're going to get our co-conspirators that are here in this province thinking twice about, oh, I thought we were untouchable, and they're not.
Police say those phone calls, though, are unlikely to stop, though the arrests have hit at the wallet of a scam we all know too well.
David Common is one of the hosts of Marketplace. He joins us now. David, you were there when the RCMP made this arrest. Take us through what happened.
It began on Wednesday morning, very early in the morning, and the RCMP investigators actually had this couple under surveillance for a number of days. When this man exited his home, they were there, already on him, tailing him, changing vehicles so he wasn't, alerted to what was going on. He continued to his workplace, and it was there as he pulled into the lot that officers surrounded his vehicle. He got out wearing a reflective jacket, part of the work that he does at a factory. They put him under arrest, brought him into custody, took him to the RCMP detachment, a secure facility in Milton, Ontario, and then called his wife and told her she had just about 2 hours to get her affairs in order and report to also be arrested. What she did not know at that time is she too was under surveillance, officers trailing her as she made her way to the police station. When she arrived there, they also immediately arrested her. And of course, Dwight, as we now know, they are charged with fraud, money laundering, and another issue under the criminal code.
How big of a dent do you think this will put into this scam? Are we going to stop getting these CRA calls?
No, we're not going to stop getting the calls. We are going to continue to get them. And it's not just the CRA, SIN card. There's all sorts of bank investigator, tech support scams that are now out there. Those are going to continue. What this does is hit the scammers, allegedly right in their pocket. That's the aim of this. Try to hit their wallet, because if you take away the money, you take away the incentive to do this. And that, Dwight, really is the thing that is going to knock down the organized criminal syndicates that are doing this out of India.
Looking forward to your report tonight. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
You can watch David's full investigation tonight on Marketplace. That's at 8 p.m. right here on CBC Television, and of course streaming on CBC Gem. Taking you to Yonge and Dundas now. This is the latest side of a protest in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en of British Columbia. The intersection is shut down right now. The group Extinction Rebellion has been there since about 5 o'clock. Toronto police say they are assisting with crowd control and trying to get traffic moving. Talks are planned this weekend between Mohawk protesters and the federal government. They are aimed at ending a week-and-a-half-long blockade near Belleville that has put the brakes on nearly all Via Rail trains and is now halting a big chunk of freight train traffic. Olivia Stefanovic has the latest.
A day before a high-level meeting planned with the federal Indigenous Services Minister, Mohawks gathered to discuss strategy. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but earlier Mohawks said they'll likely keep their camps by the tracks, regardless of what the minister says, until the RCMP leaves Wet'suwet'en territory in northern BC. With the protests shutting down rail traffic across the country, the Prime Minister is feeling intense pressure to solve the dispute, even while overseas.
This has been a really difficult week for Canadians.
There are no easy decisions for Justin Trudeau's government. Every day these demonstrations continue, the economy suffers. But the Prime Minister says he's determined to move forward peacefully.
We are a country that recognizes the right to protest, but we are a country of the rule of law, and we will ensure that everything is done to resolve this through dialogue and constructive outcomes.
But Ottawa is not prepared to take any further action because its approach seems to be working. Barricades have come down in some parts of the country. And today, the Ontario Superior Court granted CN an extended injunction to end the Tyendinaga Mohawk rail demonstration near the city of Belleville, Ontario. Provincial police are on the scene, but have been reluctant to act on it.
Quite frankly, this is getting ridiculous.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says it's time for the Prime Minister to come home and order the RCMP to intervene if protesters refuse to take down all their barricades.
They need to check their privilege and let people whose job depends on the railway system and small business, farmers, do their jobs.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller has an opportunity tomorrow to make progress, but a resolution largely depends on how the Mohawks decide to move forward. They're already defying a court injunction and aren't planning to move from the tracks anytime soon. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Tyendinaga.
And we have more on the protests and blockades still for you ahead, including how the shutdown of rail traffic could have a big impact on cities around the GTA. That is coming up for you at 6:30. Well, if you were outside at all today, you felt the biting cold. It is the coldest day of the year so far, with temperatures going as low as -15, but feeling like -20 or colder with the wind chill. An extreme cold weather alert was issued yesterday for the city. Everyone is encouraged to stay indoors when it's that cold, but those who need to venture outside should make sure to dress warmly. And Colette, I don't think I've ever been happier to see a streetcar arrive than this morning when I was out there in that biting cold waiting on King Street.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. You know, we've been so spoiled that, yeah, I'll walk down there, I'll walk here. That's the kind of winter we've had so far. It is nice once in a while to be able to get into some warmth, right? Let me just kind of give you a recap of what our average high is at this time of year. It's -1.5. Our average low is -10, right around -10. Well, isn't this interesting? Today's low this morning dropped down to -20, but today's high, this is unofficial, this is just where we've been so far, exactly mirroring up to where we normally are for a low. So that's the kind of cold air we've got in place. At least it's going to be somewhat short-lived. Here we are at that -10, -11 in Markham and in St. Catharines, and then you factor the winds in, and that knocks us back to the mid-teens or close to -20 in terms of our wind chill. Now, we've got high pressure that's moving in, and it's been shifting our winds towards the south and southwest. Now, it's not going to help that much through the overnight, but it is going to help us tomorrow with those temperatures, and we're going to get back on track and see tomorrow's highs closer to seasonal. Now, we will have partly cloudy skies overnight tonight. We'll have some sunshine there to begin the day, but there is going to be a weak system that's going to push through. That's into Saturday night. So clouds increasing through the day on Saturday, and then Saturday through the overnight, some light snow kind of flurry activity moves through. We might get a bit of a dusting. You could see 3 to 5 centimeters to the north of the GTA, but a centimeter, 2 at the most is probably just going to be moving through, and then Sunday we get into some scattered flurries. But overnight tonight, still cold, just not as cold as last night. -15, feeling like -23. And then as we go towards tomorrow afternoon, there we are, back towards seasonal, -2, but some breezy conditions with those southwesterly winds. We're actually warming up on Sunday, and then we have another system coming next week, so I got lots to fill you in on coming up.
We'll see you later. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Last year, the Ford government asked Ontarians what they thought about bringing back photo radar, and now CBC Toronto has obtained the responses from those public consultations. Some called it a cash grab, but twice as many were in favor of using cameras to automatically ticket speeding drivers. Those who were for it talked about their personal experiences and their fears about speeding in school zones. One person saying, "I live in a 50-kilometer-an-hour community safety zone and regularly see drivers going by at double that." A cyclist who had been hit by a car said, "The crosswalks near my house are death traps as drivers do not stop. Enough is enough." Most people who were against photo radar said it was a money grab from the government, and others expressed concern about the scope of the project. One person saying, "Just no, totally unsportsmanlike, like shooting fish in a barrel." Another said, "First, it will start in school zones, then roll out everywhere." Now, parents and staff from Allenby Public School near Avenue in Eglinton came out in the dozens last year during the public consultation supporting photo radar in their school zone, but they are not one of the communities that will be getting one. Alicia San explains.
Believe it or not, you're looking at a school zone. This is what it's like to be a kid walking to Allenby Junior Public School.
Because I just see the cars like going by so fast. I've seen them like run over the curve so much.
I've been a principal here for 5 years, and there's been too many days in which I've run out of the building to make sure that our students are okay because of an accident.
This made the school zone a prime candidate for the city's photo radar pilot project. A camera was set up for 4 months collecting speed data.
Over 60% of cars were speeding, and over 25% were going over 10 kilometers.
So when we were part of the pilot, it felt like we had accomplished something.
The school's parent association had a lot of success in advocating for traffic safety, getting things like barriers put up, more signage, and speed reduced. So when they learned they wouldn't be getting an automated speed enforcement camera for real this time,
we were pretty disappointed.
50 cameras have been installed across Toronto, 2 per ward.
So a lot goes into selecting where the cameras go. I mentioned they have to be in a community safety zone. That's a requirement of the legislation.
That requires a sign, probably the only sign Allenby's school zone doesn't have. And
there's very limited space in terms of where the camera can go. But it's something that we expect to be able to address sort of for the next round of installations.
Cameras will relocate every 6 months, so Speed Enforcement Day will come to Allenby Junior Public School, and that's a win for them. In fact, it's parents who have been some of the most vocal in their support for photo radar across the province. 2 to 1 people were for it.
There's a difference between the old program that people were opposed to and I think this program.
Photo radar was once proposed for Ontario highways. This is about slowing people down in neighborhoods so people like Willem can get to school safely.
What do you want to say to drivers?
Stop going so fast!
Alicia San, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto could be embarking on a bold new plan to build supportive housing. It's an approach that offers homeless residents both a roof over their heads and health and addiction services. And advocates say it's a key tool for ending the city's homelessness crisis. City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly has more.
Saad Talia's Weston apartment is full of life. It's a far cry from how he was living a decade ago after moving to Canada from Pakistan.
Somebody in Pakistan had told me, if you want to be a Torontonian, you have to live and work in the core. So I got myself an apartment in the core and I got myself a job at Bay and Blow. And I lost both of them.
Hitting rock bottom came after Talia spent decades struggling with alcohol and drug addiction. He also has depression and post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from childhood trauma.
There was a servant there, and he was sexually abusing me. And, you know, my mother knew, and her response was violent. My father never touched me. My mother was the one who used to beat me up to the point of drawing blood.
Talia can never shake that baggage, but he says he's now content. For the last 5 years, he's been living in this supportive housing unit, getting regular check-ins from support workers and help navigating the healthcare system. It's an approach the city is hoping to grow.
Listen, like many families, I have a personal connection. One of my uncles has lived in supportive housing for many years. He has lived courageously with schizophrenia since he was a young man. He's now nearly 70.
Councillor Joe Cressy wants to replicate that impact, since right now, more than 17,000 households are on the Ministry of Health supportive housing waitlist. City data shows to meet that demand, 1,800 units are needed every year.
Right now, the city is now committing to building 1/3 of those units. That's 6,000 units over the next 10 years.
In Toronto, roughly 5,000 people are experiencing long-term homelessness each year, and many struggle to overcome mental health and addiction issues in the city's jam-packed shelter system. Officials are hoping to convert some shelters into supportive housing. This homelessness advocate says the city needs to build even more and secure long-term funding.
The current plan is great and has some key things in it, but it doesn't produce a lot more new units.
Talia believes the city's new plan is just a starting point, much like how this apartment marked a new start for him.
The best thing about well-run, high-quality supportive housing is stability.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
The best basketball players in the world are in Chicago for NBA All-Star Weekend, but a diehard Raptors superfan from Toronto is also in the spotlight tonight. Our Greg Ross is live in Chicago tonight. Greg, tell us about the honor for our friend superfan Nav Bhatia.
Well, look at this guy standing right here beside me, Dwight, and a huge honor. So we're at this press conference today put on by the Basketball Hall of Fame, and essentially they were announcing the finalists for the 2020 induction ceremony. Some big names that were announced today, but they also mentioned this man, Nav Bhatia. You were mentioned, but there's more to it than just a mention, because it turns out that Mr. Bhatia here is going to be honored by the NBA Hall of Fame. They're creating a new gallery at the Hall. It's going to be the Superfan Gallery, and fitting, the man we call Superfan is going to be one of the first to go into that gallery. You're going to be honored there. Your name is going to be up there at the Basketball Hall of Fame as one of the best.
That happens in August in Springfield, Boston, at the Hall of Fame. But what a journey. I mean, I'm still in a shock. First, the championship, then the biggest, largest parade, and I'm the Grand Marshal of that. Then the biggest ring, first time a non-player getting a championship player ring, and now this. You can't dream of this. You can't plan this. This is just God's blessings, and I very humbly accept it on behalf of all the basketball fans. That's what the beauty of Basketball Hall of Fame. That's why they are the best Hall of Fame of all sports.
Yeah, so the NBA, or actually the Hall of Fame, not the NBA, the Basketball Hall of Fame, handing me this and just showing what some of the images might look like. Also being honored alongside Nav is Penny Marshall, the late Penny Marshall, a great director, obviously an actor as well. So she was a big fan of the LA Clippers, so she's going to be into the Hall as well. But I think it's so amazing for Canadians and Canadian fans to think. And let's remember, you didn't just come out of nowhere. You've been there since day one.
Well, 25 years without missing a game, without being late for a game, and never leaving a game early, and being there when there were only 4,000 people left in the fourth quarter or 5,000 people left. We had 16 losses in a season. Yes, now God is very good. We are going to probably end up again winning 58, 59 games this season, and maybe we have a good shot of winning the championship again. But I have seen more valleys than the mountains with the Raptors, and God bless, what an organization. And this happened because of the Raptors, you know, thanks to Larry and Judy Tannenbaum, Masai, Bobby Webster, all the coaches, all the present players and the past players and the ushers and everybody else and all the fans. So this is for everybody. It's not just I'm getting the honor. All the fans are being honored in this gallery.
What an incredible surprise to come down here. We didn't know this was happening. I mean, I found out earlier today that there was something happening. We weren't 100% sure. The NBA wouldn't say anything. The Basketball Hall of Fame wouldn't say a word. But now we know that this man is somebody that you can now go and see on display in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Basketball Hall of Fame. And he is a Raptor fan for life, Dwight.
Oh, it is well deserved. Our super fan in Springfield. Thank you for that, Greg. Way to go, Nav. Still ahead, we go to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra for a special Valentine's Day message. But first, love under quarantine.
This is definitely the strangest one we've ever had.
It'll be an easy one to remember. That's the truth.
Stuck on board a cruise ship, the threat of coronavirus all around, the couple decided to not let that ruin their Valentine's Day, which is also a big anniversary. We speak with them after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Canada has recorded another confirmed case of the coronavirus disease, this one in British Columbia. It is the 5th case in that province. The situation in China remains much more dire tonight, though, where officials say 6 health workers have died and more than 1,700 have been infected since the start of the outbreak. It underlines the danger posed by COVID-19 to frontline responders as well as the public.
This outbreak has expanded very quickly in an unsuspecting health system. So we also need to look at how many of those health workers were exposed unknowingly within a clinical environment.
In the past 24 hours, China has reported 121 deaths, bringing the total to more than 1,300. There are also about 5,000 new infections, bringing the number of cases to nearly 6,400. Outside of China, there are 505 confirmed cases across 24 countries. The World Health Organization has sent a team of experts to China to help investigate the cause of the outbreak and its spread. Passengers and crew of a much-shunned cruise ship have finally been allowed to disembark in Cambodia.
It is so exciting to be able to touch down your feet to the ground. Being rejected numerous times by countries, not knowing when we might ever touch ground, was a bit exhausting.
MS Westerdam docked late yesterday and health officials boarded it to check and clear the 1,455 passengers. Today, the Cambodian Prime Minister personally greeted the weary travelers with handshakes and roses. The cruise ship had to spend 2 weeks at sea after being turned away by 5 countries over fears of the coronavirus. Meanwhile, in Japan, the cruise ship Diamond Princess remains quarantined. So far, 218 people, including 12 Canadian passengers who tested positive, have been taken to hospital. This cruise ship has the largest concentration of infections outside China. It's day 10 of quarantine for those on board the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Yokohama, Japan. As they head into that final stretch, passengers are posting notes of gratitude to many crew members who helped them during this time. They also are documenting some of the lighter times on board. Some elderly passengers are now being allowed off the ship. They are being quarantined at a facility on land, but the vast majority remain on board. And of course, today is Valentine's Day for Lolita and Hans Wiesner. It also marks 48 years since the day they met. The couple from Joffrey, Alberta, are stuck on that quarantine ship, but they are still getting dressed up and making it a special occasion.
We met in passing through my girlfriend Penelope, who lives in Montreal area, and we actually only knew each other 5 days before Penelope and I were heading to Europe, but they were very good 5 days, and we decided we had a future together, although I was committed to leaving. But my year in Europe turned into only 3 weeks when I returned because I really pined for Hans, and he wanted me to come home, so I did, and then it was just a question of getting our wedding organized.
This is definitely the strangest one we've ever had.
Everybody deals with this kind of situation in their own way. I think we're just lucky that we have a positive outlook, and it's not really bothering us. Frankly, being quarantined on the ship is much nicer than those people who chose to go out on shore today to get quarantined. I bet they'll be sorry.
We've been monitoring our temperature as we're required to do, and neither one of us is anywhere near the point where it triggers action. So from that perspective, I think we're in pretty good health from a physical perspective. Mentally, I think we're doing okay because we just have a positive attitude. In our case, it's not much of a test. We get along very well, and we know each other well, and we look at these as just opportunities to have a good time together.
Definitely number one for memory. It'll be an easy one to remember. That's the truth.
We met on a gig and we needed a cellist, an extra, and so we invited Alistair to play with us. And yeah.
I thought she was really cute.
I thought he was pretty cute.
And the rest is history. Coming up, we introduce you to a few couples in perfect harmony. They are all musicians with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and they celebrated Valentine's Day by playing some romantic pieces together. You want to stay tuned for this one coming up. Shakespeare's 12th night opens with the line, "If music be the food of love, play on." Well, these next couples know all about that. They're all members of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. We caught up with them to hear their stories.
There's always a lot of label competition. I mean, she plays an easy instrument, and I play a hard instrument, so...
Here we go.
Is this gonna be edited?
I just gave an answer that I would really regret coming in.
Leslie and I have been married for 31 years.
The orchestra was on one of our European tours in 1986. Mark was just new to the orchestra. It was really that old story you hear of our eyes just kind of met across the table. So I play in the first violin section of the Toronto Symphony, and I also play mandolin when it's needed.
I don't play as much as the violins do, but when I do, it's often big dramatic moments and extreme, playing extremely loud or extremely soft.
Last year, we got to play different instruments on stage. Mark played the guitar, and I played the mandolin in Mahler's 7th Symphony. For that movement, we were seated next to each other, which would never happen otherwise, and that was really cool.
Go for it.
My name is Ashley Vandiver. I am a violist.
My name is Alistair Eng. I'm a cellist in the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. The two of us have been married since 2010. We'll be celebrating 10 years.
We met on a gig in Boston.
Thought she was really cute.
I thought he was pretty cute. So, Alistair was a cellist in the Canadian Opera Company, and I was playing in the National Arts Centre Orchestra in Ottawa. We really wanted to live together in the same city, like most married couples. I auditioned here. It was a very stressful time. The pressure of knowing that if things go your way, you could live with your husband was tremendous. It was just such a wonderful result.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate because it's hard enough to win one audition, and then for two people to win auditions in the same place is, we're so fortunate.
We both love Scheherazade. It's just a great piece. It's just romantic in itself, and the melodies just get you stirred up and in a really nice emotional space.
If you had to pick one romantic piece, the Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto would probably be it.
Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto has a really, really beautiful second movement.
It's so romantic. Like, I know I'm not the romantic type, but wow.
We don't have a tradition, really. We just try to be nice to one another.
Quite often we play for other people to go out on their Valentine's Day date. So that's nice. It's part of what we love about what we do is bringing music to people.
We're pretty practical.
Yeah,
we don't have any Valentine's tips other than just keep listening and keep smiling.
Yeah, and call a truce. A truce is good.
Yeah. Truce when needed.
We actually did it backwards. Most couples in orchestras meet in the orchestra, and we fell in love, so.
I would highly recommend falling in love with someone in your orchestra.
And then not having to audition there?
Yes.
I'll call it. I'm getting all the warm and fuzzies here. That was so sweet. I really enjoyed that. And I have to tell the viewers that my partner, Colin, I had to change my tie today. After I saw how she was in the Valentine's Day spirit, I had to go find a red tie and change it up.
Well, it's not like I'm into Valentine's Day or anything, right? Could I have them any more pink or red? But that's what I love about you. So thank you for being my TV partner in crime and, yeah, matching up. I love that story, though. Just love to see the romance. It's not everybody who can work with their partner, that's for sure. Hey, I want to show you this graphic because we looked at it a few days ago when we knew this cold air was coming, and it was a situation where it's like, okay, taking a look at where our temperatures have been since we've been in 2020 and even going back to the end of 2019. Well, we have a new low for 2020, minus 20.6. That's from this morning. So when did that happen last? Well, to get colder than that, instead of going back to the beginning of February, we actually have to go back to the end of January of 2019, since it's been as cold as what it was Overnight last night. And you know what? Still some very cold temperatures out there. So -10, how it feels, that's a different story. Almost like -20. Tonight is going to be another cold one. You still have to be cautious. It's just not as cold as last night. So the extreme cold, those warnings have been lifted. They're still in place, though, towards the nation's capital and extreme eastern Ontario. There's some of that cloud cover, but really high pressure is building over top of us. Southwesterly winds tomorrow are going to help those temperatures to rise, but they will be gusty at times. We should have some sunshine, and then late day we'll see more cloud cover starting to push in as this next system gets towards us. So you can see it'll be kind of variable through the day. That's noon. And then overnight, even late evening Saturday, overnight into Sunday, expect just a dusting of some snow, mostly some scattered flurries behind that, and not a big deal. And then we clear out again Sunday into Monday, and then the next system on our doorstep that's going to come through on Monday night into Tuesday. That one we might see a little bit of light accumulation up to 5 centimeters and kind of a mix in there because of the temperatures coming up. -15 tonight, -16 though for Markham, -14 for St. Catharines. Tomorrow, there we are, all the way back towards seasonal with our temperatures, although breezy. And then Sunday above seasonal again, 2 degrees, -2 on Monday though. And there's that, as that system comes through, 5 degrees we're looking at into Tuesday. So there you go.
Freeze.
That tie looks good on you, by the way.
Thank you, Colette. Dozens of protesters gathered outside government buildings in Victoria today in another demonstration of support for the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs and their opposition to the pipeline. None of the protesters appeared to block the entrance to any government buildings. Yesterday, the province obtained an injunction preventing blockades at entrances to the legislature. That came after dozens of protesters blocked those entrances earlier this week. The hereditary chiefs opposed construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline through their traditional territory in a show of solidarity. Protesters have disrupted rail service in Ontario, Manitoba, and other parts of BC. We know Via Rail service has been hard hit by the protests, but the rail shutdowns are also impacting the movement of many products that Canadians rely on, including one chemical that's crucial to safe drinking water. Philip Lee Shannock explains.
That small protest near Belleville is having a big impact down the line. Via's passenger rail services have been canceled again this long weekend, disrupting the lives of many.
I have options, but some people don't have those options. They're stuck here. So I really feel for them. I'm managing, but it's pretty frustrating.
I can't get to my family over there. So now they're giving me a beautiful paper like this there to take the bus.
When I saw the screen, it was like canceled, so I was like real surprised because I don't know anyone here in Toronto.
And it's not just thousands of rail passengers being inconvenienced. Protesters have a chokehold on the transportation of goods as well. And in some cases, that could present a public safety issue. Canadian National Railway has also shut down its Eastern Canadian network as the protests continue. The chemical industry says it can't deliver such things as ingredients for hand sanitizer, aircraft de-icing fluid, and chlorine for water treatment.
If you do not receive the chlorine you need to treat your drinking water, you are unable to provide clean drinking water. You're now on boil advisory.
The City of Toronto says there's no need to panic.
We get chlorine in 1-ton cylinders, and they come on trucks on road, so they're not. They don't go on rail.
As of right now, the city has a 3-week supply of chlorine on hand to keep that water clean. But there are other options if the supplies dry up.
We have 4 water treatment plants, so 3 weeks from now, we may need to shut one water plant down.
Meanwhile, the chemical industry says something needs to be done right now before it's too late.
Folks, you've got to resolve this crisis, get product moving, get the chlorine and other commodities into these locations within the next 7 to 10 days, or you are going to be in a crisis.
The federal government says it will continue to talk with protesters, while it says it's up to the OPP to enforce a judge's injunction to remove them. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
We will be keeping an eye on the Belleville blockade. You can find the very latest online anytime at cbcnews.ca. 10 women have launched a class action lawsuit against Canadian fashion industry mogul Peter Nygard. It accuses him of sexual assault and sex trafficking. He denies the allegations. Bob McEwen has more on this story and a warning it contains some graphic content.
Peter Nygaard is one of Canada's wealthiest businessmen and clothing manufacturers. The women in the New York lawsuit allege he was operating a sex trafficking ring and that he raped them at his seaside mansion in the Bahamas between 2008 and 2015. 6 of the women were only 14 or 15 years old at the time of the alleged rapes. The lawsuit was filed in New York, and the women are not named to protect their identities. According to the suit, Nygaard recruited and lured often impoverished children with cash payments and false promises of modeling opportunities. The women allege that Nygaard drugged, raped, and sodomized them at what he's called his pamper parties at his home in the Bahamas. In a statement released yesterday, Peter Nygaard's lawyer vigorously denied the accusations, saying they're completely false and without foundation, and that this is just the latest in a 10-year battle between him and his former neighbor in the Bahamas, U.S. billionaire Louis Bacon. In November 2019, Nygaard sued Bacon, alleging he hired private detectives to influence witnesses to make false statements and destroy Nygaard's reputation. The recent lawsuit also alleges Nygaard initiated a scheme to purchase police protection in the Bahamas by making regular payments of tens of thousands of dollars to law enforcement and government officials. Thursday's allegations follow 2 additional lawsuits accusing Nygaard of sexual assault, filed in Los Angeles in January. None of the allegations have yet been proven in court, and at this time there are no criminal charges against Peter Nygaard. Bob McEwen, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada is leading the fight for the flight recorders from the plane Iran shot down, killing dozens of Canadians. But will that information be useful in the investigation? That story coming up next. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is at the Munich Security Conference today, where his foreign minister met with Iranian officials to again demand answers about what happened to Ukrainian Airlines Flight 752, specifically the fight for access to the flight's data recorders.
And my foreign minister had a meeting with the foreign minister of Iran in which he talked about the importance of getting those black boxes to Paris, the importance of continuing to work together on a full investigation with accountability for the people responsible.
The passenger jet was shot down by Iran in early January, killing all 176 people on board, including 57 Canadians and 29 permanent residents. Canada is leading an international charge to get the black boxes, but as Ashley Burke explains, there are new questions about how much information they would actually provide.
We happen to have the exact same make and model of the flight recorder.
Black boxes like this one are caught in the middle of an international tug-of-war over Flight 752.
This is the flight data.
These flight data recorders are on every commercial aircraft, and they're crucial to any investigation if something goes wrong.
That are telling you how the aircraft is being operated.
But in the case of the Ukrainian airliner that went down in Iran, this expert says expect disappointment.
The likelihood that they're going to bear fruit is pretty small or zero.
At best, Mike Poole says you might hear a couple of words from the pilots.
You may have a few seconds of aftermath.
Flight 752 was shot down in the hours after Iran attacked a U.S. base in neighboring Iraq. But exactly how that happened still isn't known.
We recognize that the black boxes are key to the investigation.
Canada has been leading the calls for Iran to hand over the black boxes because it doesn't have the expertise to analyze the data.
The wish of Canada, the wish of the coordination group would be that the black box be sent quickly, either to Ukraine or to France.
There's important information on the voice recorders. They're playing some kind of a game.
This former TSB investigator says the fight for the data recorders is really just political.
I think that politicians should be a little bit careful in trying to pressure the Iranians for international and political reasons, that they aren't creating higher expectations than there should be for the families.
But the fight for black boxes isn't just about getting answers. For Canadian officials, it's also about forcing Iran to follow international requirements. It's supposed to analyze the recorders without delay, and if it can't, find a country that can. But 5 weeks on, there's still no sign of that happening. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
It is very scary to do this, and it was almost like jumping off a cliff, but I feel so free.
1 year and 1 million downloads later, we catch up with two Toronto friends who started their own podcast about their experiences as gay men. More of their story next. A little less than a year ago, two best friends started a podcast. It was a conversation between two gay men about their experiences, and everything was up for discussion. The podcast is called Shame on You, and more than 50 episodes later, the podcast has been downloaded more than 1 million times. Merville Tarouk caught up with the creators.
The podcast is the ultimate antidote to every message that we've received our entire lives that says there's something wrong with you, you're a broken person. And I think for us, this is us going to such extreme lengths to say, there's nothing wrong with us, we're gonna talk about every aspect of our life and we're gonna broadcast it to the world and we're not gonna shut up.
That's the guiding principle for every Shame on You episode. Best friends Jordan Power and Brad Price decided to put their unvarnished experiences as gay young men in Toronto into a podcast.
When people try to hook up their gay friends, they're like, oh, you're gay, they're gay, this will be perfect. He's homeless, he lives in a van.
That's literally what this is like.
You're gay, you have a shower, it's a perfect match.
That's all you need, really.
Well, I would imagine if you've never kissed a man before, it'd be weird. Like the facial hair, the scruff, it's not like soft, smooth skin of a woman.
Right.
It would be definitely something to get used to.
Well, I was wearing lipstick. That also made it awkward.
Much of the podcast is delivered with a dose of humor while also taking on the serious, often dangerous issues facing their community. They brought a 60-year-old gay therapist on to talk about the lost generation of men who died from AIDS.
We knew you were dead in weeks to months.
And that quick?
Yeah, it was that quick then. And, you'd start to get these lesions with Kaposi's sarcoma all over your face, and proud gay men, and their face would decay and their brains would decay, and we'd decide on a date.
Tell me about the places that you might not have expected to have people downloading your podcasts in.
We have a lot of countries in the Middle East where it's illegal to be gay, and these people have no outlet to kind of express their sexuality, and we're their only option. So the messages we receive from kind of these areas are like, you make me feel normal, and you make me feel like it's okay to be gay in a society where it's illegal for me to express love. So that is what I found the most shocking.
They've now become advocates for their community. Just take a look at what their listeners near and far have said. I'm a firefighter in Winnipeg and have struggled for years of coming out mainly to the guys at work. After listening to your podcast, I've been able to tell 2 firefighters and my sister. He now plans to tell his family and fellow firefighters. Being a closeted 40-year-old Arab living in rural Arabia, your podcast is something refreshing. I'm starting up conversations, and it goes on, a mini movement to get people talking about LGBT rights. Hopefully, I don't get deported because of it.
We started this thinking we would have gay people as our demographic, but the fact that it reaches middle-aged straight women, my straight friends that are in their 30s, and they all are the ones that are our biggest fans almost, and are the ones that are most obsessed, because they're learning things that they maybe were too shy to ask or too embarrassed, what have you, but now they're learning things about us.
You can see more great stories from around our city this weekend on Our Toronto. That's Sunday at noon here on CBC Television. A frigid end to the work week on this Valentine's Day. Colette's back with details of a weekend warm-up next. Our friend Colette is all in on Valentine's Day. Look at the shoes, folks. She put the whole newsroom to shame. And Colette, I think it's so cold today because Mother Nature is trying to encourage some cuddling with your significant other on this Valentine's
A
Day.
little snuggling up. My boots match your tie.
I know.
Yeah, we're all kitted out here for Valentine's Day. Yeah, I think it encourages something anyway. You got to snuggle up in some manner. And it's going to be another cold one tonight, but not as bad as last night, okay? So temperatures are going to be dropping off, but we're looking at tomorrow, those temperatures back up to seasonal. So -2 by tomorrow afternoon.
Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you have a good one, everybody. Have a good night.